All right, let's head back to the early 90s. But we're not going to Seattle, and we're not going to LA. Nope. Our story kicks off right in the middle of the California desert. And it's this totally wild, unlikely tale of how this empty, sun-baked landscape gave birth to a whole new genre of heavy music.
I mean, this sentence just says it all, doesn't it? Just try to picture that for a second. A band, miles away from anything, surrounded by nothing but sand and stars, just blasting these monstrously loud rock riffs for maybe a handful of people. It sounds completely insane, right? But for them, it was literally the only way to do it. So that's really the big question we're going to dig into. How on earth did this place, with its extreme isolation and absolutely zero infrastructure, become the perfect breeding ground for a sound that would go on to change heavy music forever? It's a pretty amazing story about necessity being the mother of invention. You're going to see how the place, the people, and the sound were all kind of forged by the exact same elemental forces.
Okay, so let's start with the legend itself, the story of a band called Kyuss and their now famous generator parties. And that phrase, heavy riffs for nobody, well, it's not just some cool, edgy line. It perfectly captures the radical, do-it-yourself spirit that was absolutely essential to survive out there in the desert. It's what defined the entire scene. But to really, truly understand the music, you first have to understand the place. The desert wasn't just some convenient, empty spot to go make a bunch of noise. No way. It was an active ingredient. You could almost say it was the single most important factor that shaped not just the sound, but the entire culture and the people who were creating it. The Coachella Valley was, well, it was a real paradox. During the day, you had this brutal, oppressive heat and this sense of just crushing isolation. But at night, that same isolation turned into this incredible, unparalleled freedom. There were no rules out there, no commercial pressures. The sheer scale of the place kind of forces you to look inward, you know? It created this mindset that was ready to just reject anything superficial and build something raw and real from the ground up. And this comparison here just spells it out perfectly. In a city, you've got a whole infrastructure for music, right? Clubs, promoters, rules, it's all there. But out in the desert, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No clubs that would book a heavy original band. This void, though, it wasn't a problem. It was an opportunity. It forced this radical self-reliance that actually became the scene's greatest strength, leading to total creative freedom and just pure, unadulterated experimentation. So, what do you do when you've got no place to play? Simple. You invent one. And this is how the legendary generator parties were born. These weren't just concerts, you gotta understand. They were acts of defiance. They were these communal rituals out in the middle of nowhere, a whole scene built, quite literally, from sand and electricity. And just look at the sheer effort involved here. This was not easy. First, you had to somehow get your hands on an industrial-grade generator. Then, you had to haul hundreds of pounds of super heavy gear down these rough, bumpy dirt roads. You had to find a spot far enough out that you wouldn't get shut down. And promotion? Forget flyers. This was all word of mouth, coordinates passed from one friend to another. It was a monumental task, every single time. The result of all that work was something truly unique. Seriously, imagine it. There's no stage separating the band from the crowd, just a circle of people around a bonfire. No tickets, no security, no bouncers telling you what to do. It was this incredibly intimate, totally free environment where everyone was an equal. The line between being a performer and being in the audience just completely vanished under the desert stars. And right at the center of this whole scene, there was one band, Kyuss. Now, other bands played for sure, but Kyuss, they were the ones who really figured out how to capture the feeling of the desert, its vastness, its weight, its slow, heavy rhythm, and they translated it into music. They were basically the architects of this brand new sound. And what's wild is how quickly they evolved. Their first album, Wretch, you can still hear some of the thrash metal that was popular back then. But just 1 year later, with Blues for the Red Sun, everything changed. The tempos just dropped, the sound got way heavier and fuzzier, and the grooves became completely hypnotic. This right here, this was the moment the genre was really born, a sound that would just perfect on their next album, Welcome to Sky Valley. So what was their secret sauce? Well, it was this perfect storm of unique elements. You had guitarist Josh Homme tuning his guitar way, way down to C standard, making the strings all loose and the sound super deep. He even played through bass amps to create this massive, earth-shaking rumble. Then you've got John Garcia's vocals, this perfect mix of bluesy soul and just raw power. And holding it all down was the drummer, Brant Bjork, whose playing was all about these deep, swinging grooves, not just about playing fast. And when you put all those ingredients together, well, that's it. That is the definitive sound of stoner rock. See, it's not just about being heavy. It's about a very specific kind of heavy. A thick, warm, fuzzed-out tone. It's about choosing a hypnotic, driving groove over just pure aggression and speed. And it's all wrapped up in this psychedelic, bluesy vibe. That is the sound that Kyuss forged out in the desert.
Of course, Kyuss eventually broke up, and the generator parties kind of faded into legend. But the impact of what started in that tiny, isolated scene, well, it was just getting started. You could almost say the end of the parties was the big bang that sent the genre out into the world. The desert sound was about to go global.
And man, did the legacy explode. The members of Kyuss went on to form these massively influential bands like Queens of the Stone Age. But even bigger than that, bands from Sweden to Australia started picking up on that fuzzed-out, groove-heavy sound. Desert rock stopped being about a place, it became a feeling, a style. And huge festivals like Desert Fest prove that this genre is still absolutely thriving today.
But honestly, beyond all the great music, this is the most powerful lesson from the whole desert scene. The generator parties left behind a blueprint. They proved that you don't need a record label, you don't need a promoter, you don't even need a building to create a vital, world-changing music scene. All it really takes is passion, some ingenuity, and a community of people who are willing to build it with you.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. You know, today, music discovery is all driven by algorithms, and success is measured in streams. So what can we learn from this story? From a scene that was built not on data, but on gasoline and grit and the raw physical connection of people just gathered around a bonfire, sharing a real experience together, it's definitely something to think about.